Leadership Preparation Webinar Series, 6 Components of Trauma-Informed School, Part 2. The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement is comprised of an executive director reporting to the Assistant State Superintendent, coordinators for school improvement, academic improvement, and leadership development, as well as leadership specialists. Our office has 3 main goals: fostering the growth of effective leaders, ensuring valid and reliable evaluations, and raising the quality of education. We provide targeted professional learning experiences and resources to equip current and future leaders with the skills and knowledge required for successful school and district leadership. We oversee the development and implementation of Maryland's teacher and principal evaluation system. Training, guidance, and support is provided to local school systems in the implementation of fair and valid evaluations. Lastly, we provide customized professional learning experiences and support informed by data and grounded in effective practices to improve school performance. To earn continuing professional development credit, in order to receive 1 credit, you must view 5 webinars, including Part 1 and Part 2. Additionally, you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to receive 2 CPD credits, you must watch all the webinars in the series, including Part 1 and Part 2. Then you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include any pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to submit your materials, please complete the Google form found in the description below the video. Let's meet the presenters. From the National Association of Secondary School Presenters, Harrison Bailey III and Nicholas Stomachalidis.
And our agenda today is first to review Part 1, talking about trauma and toxic stress. And then in Part 2, talking a little bit more about what do we do about those 2 things. How do we identify critical components of a trauma-informed school? How do we provide an implementation plan and provide you with some helpful resources? Some logistics before we begin. You should have some participant information that consists of a participant guide and also some questions to review along the way. Please utilize this guide to take notes and follow along through these slides. You also should have some trauma resources that you can utilize in the process to becoming a trauma-informed school, and the ACEs study, which you would have taken at the end of Part 1. Finally, you have a sample of some breathing exercises and other activities that you can utilize in this training. Our contact info is in the slides. As you look through, you'll see it towards the end. And you also should have a link to all of this information and all the resources that you need in the link listed below.
So let's look at a summary of Part 1. What is trauma? So we established that children face significant life challenges. We define trauma and its effects on the brains and bodies of children. We also define toxic stress and how it develops from traumatic events. We use the term ACEs, which means adverse childhood experiences. And at this point, you've used a participant guide and you've taken your own score. And you've also watched the Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris video. So what do we do about trauma? We're going to identify the critical components of a trauma-informed school, describe an implementation plan, and provide helpful resources. Our objectives for Part 2. Upon completion, each participant will be able to discuss the significance of the 6 components, identify the 3 tiers of support in your school, become aware of how vicarious trauma affects educators, map out a plan of transition to become a trauma-informed school, and connect trauma to 6 professional standards of educational leaders of equity, support, professional capacity, professional community, family engagement, and school improvement. So let's review from Part 1. Trauma disconnects us from all sense of resourcefulness, safety, coping, or love. A person with multiple negative stressors without the resources to cope may be experiencing toxic stress.
So let's talk a little bit about the four critical realities. Trauma affected students often have physiological barriers to learning and behaving. Our job is to help students work through their trauma, not cure it. I say that again. Our job as educators is to help students work through their trauma, not cure it. We must lift their hope levels. And finally, and probably the most difficult one, we must accept that a child's behavior is not about you. So, as a school, I told you in part one that at Liberty High School, we came together and started to identify that trauma and toxic stress were the enemy. And as a committee, met quite a bit and came up with the 6 key components of a trauma-informed school. We knew that these 6 things were the things that were absolutely critical in helping us further develop into a trauma-informed school. First and foremost, we looked at Maslow's hierarchy. You may remember Maslow's hierarchy from your early education courses. But Maslow's hierarchy basically says that when you think about a pyramid, you move from the bottom of that pyramid to the top, and the hierarchy is at the bottom are those physiological needs, those critical things, food, shelter, those things that we absolutely need as human beings. And if you have all of those things, now you move up to the next level. And so those levels jump from safety and a number of other important items all the way up to self-actualization. And so it's critical that we have the tier below it is fulfilled, those needs are fulfilled below it, all the way up to self-actualization. The only way we can achieve self-actualization, which is where the higher learning occurs, is if those needs below it are met. So we knew that we had to focus in on Maslow's hierarchy. Second, mindfulness and self-care. We decided that it was critical for our students to become much more mindful, and our adults for that matter as well, to become much more mindful about who they are and how they fit, not just in our school, but in our community. And so this process of becoming more mindful became a focus. In fact, we decided that we were going to now provide mindfulness training to all of our freshmen. And so at this point, we're training our 3rd year. So at the end of this school year, 75% of our students will have been trained in mindfulness. And so that's the thought of being able to focus, to wall out all of the noise that happens in our lives, and truly prepare yourself for the task at hand. The other piece was self-care. We knew that a lot of our staff were not taking care of themselves. We're not doing things to repair themselves in the battle in educating our children. And we also knew that our students weren't doing that as well. And so we started to put together some programs around helping people take care of themselves, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Our 3rd component is community and cultural connectedness. As we started to think about our students and the people that we serve, the families that we serve, we knew that while we had an idea of who they were, we didn't truly know them on a deep personal level. And we needed to spend more time understanding our community and the cultures that exist within them. Not just them as silos, but how they're connected to each other. And so we decided that we needed to spend more time understanding who our community is and what makes them tick. 4th, trauma-informed education. Obviously, as we were just starting this process, we needed to learn more about how trauma and toxic stress affects the brains and bodies of our students and our staff. 5th, restorative practices and relationships. We were already a restorative high school. If you don't know much about restorative practices, I would recommend that you learn more about it. It's basically, in a nutshell, restorative practices is a process of understanding that when harm is done, we have to repair that harm, that we value relationships, and if we value relationships, we have a duty to make things right between us. And so number 5 was spending more time around restorative practices, making sure everyone was trained, and understanding that we value relationships as a school and an organization. Finally, relevant and rigorous instruction. We had to start to question, are the things that we're teaching relevant to the lives of our students and their families? And are the things that we're teaching rigorous and preparing them for the futures that they will face? In addition to those 6 components, we knew that we had to do a better job of addressing the way in which we support students. So if you think about 3 tiers of support as a pyramid, and you think about all 3 levels of that pyramid being separated by a screen, if you will. And so the bottom level of that pyramid were the individual relationships. So the way in which we interact, how trauma-informed we are in our communication, and how our classrooms operate. And so we knew pretty quickly that we had some work to do in terms of improving those relationships. But what we also knew is that we were in a position where a lot of our students who needed that extra support were jumping right from where they were to our most significant level of service, our outside service providers. And we also knew that we didn't have enough outside service providers to deal with all of the trauma and toxic stress that our kids had. And so we had to create a better system to deal with that. And so we knew that first and foremost, our individual relationships were the key to making sure that we could meet their needs. And so as we improved those relationships, students would get, if you will, between level 1 and level 2, students would get caught in that net, many of them, and not have to move to the next level of service. But those that did have to move to the next level of service, that next level was our school systems. Those things that we can control, those programs that we deliver and that our staff work through. And so students that needed that next level of support would be met there. And so again, we had to do a better job of assessing how effective those programs were. We have student assistance programs or SAP teams. We had a wellness office that consisted of 2 social workers. So things that we had, that we operated as a school and as a district. And hopefully we caught more students at that level and that they didn't need to move to our top level of outside service providers. So again, students might hopefully get caught in that net due to our support, but those that didn't move to level 3. Those are the services that we contract people to come into our buildings. They could be mental health workers. They could be for psychological needs. For instance, we have health vans, dental vans, and then social workers that we contract for as well. So when you think about those 3 tiers of support, we had to take a very humbling assessment of how we provided service and how effective it was.
So following what Harrison just shared, a lot of heavy information was given in the first part, but here's the part where our hope levels as educators and what we love to do for our young folks start rising. So take a moment to consider, what is the #1 research-based intervention to support children fighting toxic stress? Is it being on a sports team? Is it alone time playing video games? Is it a good group of friends? Is it one positive adult? Or financial resources? And the answer is one positive relationship with one caring adult. All the others are excellent and worthy, but think of the power of a positive relationship with one caring adult. And so you can put to bed forever that science is showing us that children born under disadvantaged circumstances are doomed to poor life outcomes. Scientific research points that the presence of a stable, caring adult in a child's life is the key to building the skills of resilience. So being trauma-informed and becoming resiliency-minded. And so I like to share this quote that puts us all on the hook, as I like to mention to our staff with Harrison. And that resilience, that's what we desire, that's what we want for our students and for ourselves for this time. It gets built over time. You're not born with it. And I like the quote by Eric Greitens, a former Rhodes Scholar and Navy SEAL, who says that resilience is the willingness and ability to endure hardship and become better by it. But it's a habit that sinks its roots in the soil of security. So the child who is always protected from harm will never be resilient. And so some of our experience, we see that sometimes with perhaps some of our well-intentioned and well-meaning parents are not allowing their personal kids to walk through the fire, so to speak, as the subjectivity that we may all hold as parents. But here's the part that's really interesting and puts us all on the hook, as I like to say, and that is, at the same time, the child who is never loved will rarely be resilient. That's really powerful, and the empathy that happens between people. So, for example, between a student and a teacher, when it's part of a relationship, we learned earlier on the first part about cortisol and adrenaline and how that creates illness and sickness, which isn't natural, but it creates all this disease. And yet empathy, when it's part of a relationship in a classroom, now the good chemicals, the oxytocin and the serotonin are flowing between both, not only the one talking, but the one listening as well. So these neurobiological events are being put into motion, and then neurophysiological states are being altered and changed as the brains connect and they're growing in resilience. Basically, look at it this way: the cortisol and the adrenaline are being decreased and pushed to the side and minimized as the good chemicals are flowing to the brain. And so science has always told us the only organ that we have that is social is the brain. And so summing all this up to basically say, in the power that we hold as educational leaders and educators, is that empathy heals and saves lives. So we win the heart to win the head. So we talk about secondary and vicarious trauma. A lot of the stress that we take upon ourselves with so many kids in our classroom today coming from very difficult and challenging situations. So as you see in that slide, we're basically splashing around in the mud and we're getting dirty. We're getting exhausted. Things are getting into us because of that care and concern. And we don't have a way, or we're not conscious of finding a way to metabolize all that stress, all that challenging, exhausting, negative energy, if you will. And so at Liberty High School, we started a self-care program where we asked individuals, and we talk about leading self-care, that we empower teachers. We ask teachers just to champion a practice that they utilize to be balanced, whole, and healthy. So the list on the left, as you see on the slide, entails some of the weekly and bi-weekly self-care groups that meet after school. This allows staff to simultaneously become healthier and even strengthen our community. So you see some of the wonderful activities there that individuals have said, this is what helps me stay balanced and stay on center. And so I want to share that practice and be a part of it. So that's pretty interesting and great to see with our staff. In the column to the right, you'll see practicing self-care. And so we talk about classroom practices that we're teaching to our teachers to utilize with students so that everyone learns how to use these skills independently and at any time when someone becomes triggered or they're starting to get off center, starting to get misaligned or dysregulated. And so some of the things that we envision a day where every single one of our classrooms, as they transition from class to class, that they start the class with 2 minutes of silence, for example. We have a group of teachers that are piloting this right now. The goal is one day that we do that. Take 2 minutes in silence and breathing before we even start the curriculum and the material. Because science shows when you do that, amazing things are happening with the circulation in our brain. And it's actually even more relaxing than listening to relaxing music. And so we're teaching our students, our teachers, how to incorporate their breath to get them in the optimum state to learn. You also see on our list there that it's important that we increase our heart rate a few times a week so that we exercise, that we get moving. Earlier, you heard me say all these are things to metabolize all that emotional junk, if you will, and the challenge and the stressors of life. We welcome our teachers to practice gratitude. Gratitude rewires our brains in ways that have lasting effects that are excellent for our overall wellness and healing. Learning how to take breaks, mindfulness, meditation, and what we call our 60, 90-second freeze, where we just stop and we don't speak and we don't act. We just take a moment to pause and recollect ourselves. So very important to be engaged with the type of work and the challenges that you heard earlier in part one, all these things swirling on top of the challenges we have as educators to truly practice within classrooms as an individual and also school-wide with some of the self-care programs.
So in addition to looking at the 6 components and assessing our services, we decided that we needed to expand in order to meet the needs of our students. And so what we did was we went from what is called a wellness office to a wellness center. And The way in which we did this, which I think as educators and administrators, you're interested hopefully in doing something like this, we designed this presentation and took it on the road, so to speak. So we presented it to our local Congress people and obviously our superintendent and pushed this agenda. And fortunately, we received a major grant in the state and we sold this program as a pilot for the state that hopefully they get to create these wellness centers all over Pennsylvania. But the focus was obviously on improving mental health in our school. The plan was to have 3 social workers or family therapists within the center, a counseling psychologist or some type of supervising therapist who would manage interns from our local universities or college partners. We would have an occupational therapist or occupational interns in the center and have a sensory or peace room to provide a calming space for all of our students and our staff. Fortunately, this summer, we began that process of building our wellness center, and we hope to open that center soon here at our school. So definitely great things happening and can happen once you begin this process. As administrators, we know that any major initiative that we put in place or program we begin really is a long-term commitment. There's a philosophical shift that has to happen as we try to put these things in place. Our staff will go from a point of awareness, right, where you're just exposing them to the information, hopefully to a point of understanding, where now they're inspired to seek out more, to process it, to question thoughts, to come to you with ideas, to acceptance, where they believe that the info that you've been giving them is actually valid and actually starts to create some motivation within them to do some things. And then finally, an actual readiness to act, in which your staff are actively seeking ways to improve the conditions within the school. One of the key things in this process is being patient. We looked at this as a 6-year plan, and to be honest, the process of becoming a trauma-informed school is a process. It's a journey, not a destination. It's not something that you ever really reach. So you have to be patient. In year 1, we looked at just identifying trauma and creating awareness around our building. We created our committee and just began professional development on the surface level. In year 2, we put forth a dedicated effort to educate our staff and begin to plan our wellness center. In year 3, we then moved on to educating students while we continued to educate our staff and secure funding for the wellness center. In year 4, we began to educate our families and continue to educate our staff and students. And at that point, established the wellness center. In year 5, we pushed forward with the idea of serving as a pilot for trauma-informed schools around the state, and then began to educate our community. And then finally in year 6, that is where you assess your wellness center and assess your training programs. Obviously, we're not there yet. We still have a lot to learn and a lot to do, but that's the plan.
So we know that the key to a truly healthy school and community is to face these challenges. So be honest with the current needs due to COVID and hardships created for students, families, staff. Partner with parents and community organizations. Constantly network and utilize the resources parents and outside agencies and organizations can offer for student, parent, and staff wellness. Third, connect affected students with resources and caring adults. So the wellness centers, as you heard Harrison mention, and mentoring programs, we believe are going to be necessary components of the educational process in schools moving forward, and educate ourselves and the community to be trauma informed. So continue to feed your constituents with weekly doses of information in regards to trauma informed material and resources via email, Zoom conferences, etc. So it becomes, and it is, a fabric of your culture. That's what we do with our staff every week. They're getting something in regards to trauma informed or being resiliency minded in order that we continuously grow and learn. So being trauma informed, as you heard many times throughout both of these sections and parts, that it's relationship based. We talk about empathy in relationships. When that happens, of the flow of oxytocin and serotonin. And having empathy in relationships You could still do that and hold someone accountable. You can still do that and teach someone not to be entitled in things. So we can still teach our young folks not to be part of a culture of compromise, and yet do it in a way that empathy is involved. And never forget that trauma-affected behavior is not about you. So don't take it personal. It'll be one of the most liberating things that you can do professionally. Third, you are helping people through their experience, and you're not fixing them. You've heard Harrison say that a few times during this presentation. So be a support through adversity, and we're not fixing or curing. That really takes a lot of pressure off of you. Fourth, value relationships. When you finally learn that a person's behavior has more to do with their own struggle and nothing to do with you, then you learn grace. So accept that behavior is the result of a person's experiences. And last but not least, how we interact can either support or intensify how those affected by trauma may feel and react. So we're the decisive element. We can be instruments of healing, an inspiration, or perhaps hurt another. So our responses, our communication is going to escalate or de-escalate matters, and whether we humanize or inadvertently dehumanize another because of their past hurts and pain. So school-wide recommendations. Assess the health of relationships in your school. Fight to improve relationships in your school. It is a fight. And with everything going on, be up for that challenge and continuously work at it. As Harrison mentioned, we are a restorative high school. And so that sets the stage to really not just have it as a soundbite, but truly fight every day that we believe in relationships and communication. So fight for that. Pay special attention to how all people talk to each other. Complaining is toxic. It reinforces low expectations and it absolves others of responsibility. It creates distance between the student and teacher, and that's not helpful. Third, evaluate the methods you use to allow people to readily accept responsibility for their actions and restore harm. That's a big push, as we mentioned earlier, about being a restorative high school and being able to fix the harm that was done. Fourth, consult your entire staff and student body throughout the process to gain immediate buy-in. Be very transparent, be very open. From the beginning, as Harrison spearheaded this with the team, he let them know, this is what we're going after, this is what we're doing. But it was a process where it was opened up for individuals at different segments and stations to be able to have a voice and ownership. Fifth, select and design a relationship-based sustainable program. You heard that in the earlier slide. It is a journey. It is a journey, and it's something that you need to be deliberate and really take the time in it. And relationships and trust, greater levels of trust, take time. So take the time for it. And last but not least, identify and deliver the necessary professional development before, during, and after implementation. So that's key, that we constantly are having this before our staff, not only on the selected dates for professional development, but also, as you heard me say earlier, weekly, that we keep this as one of the top 3 main things. And it's always in our staff's mind. We're always embedding it in the fabric of our culture to constantly be able to have this type of thinking, this shift, this paradigm shift, if you will, to be part of how we tackle our instruction, how we tackle our relationships, and how we want to support our students, families, and staff through these difficult and challenging times. So here are some of the resources. They're all excellent. I definitely want to emphasize what you've already viewed, which is 1B with Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, how childhood trauma affects health across a lifetime. Also want to highlight Resiliency, the video. It's phenomenal information. Another strong video, a little bit over an hour of incredible information in your journey. And then I also want to highlight there, number 3, letter A, ACEs Connection. That is something you can sign up for, and every day, Monday through Friday, you get an average of about 4 to 6 different journals, articles that are happening throughout our nation, of where different states, different communities, different universities are engaging in the work of trauma and adverse childhood experiences and how we can better our communities, our state, our country, and our world. So take a moment to examine our ACEs beyond just the easy part, I guess, of what your score is. As you were engaged in this survey in the participants guide, what are you willing to do about it? And do something that is definitely something that's winnable. we get small wins, and that is to share with perhaps somebody, with yourself and somebody in your class, of one action step that you're committed to taking to address your ACE score.
So with this training, there are a number of suggested follow-up trainings that may be helpful in this process to becoming a trauma-informed school. We can assist you with any of these, from things on how to change your school culture to become more trauma-informed, combating vicarious trauma, which we all need as staffs in professional development, coaching leaders for trauma-informed care, and other leadership tools that may help you along the way. We want to thank you for your support and being here and being willing to learn about trauma and toxic stress. These are critical topics in improving the conditions for our students. We're dedicated to this, and we thank you for listening and being with us through this presentation.
Yes, we thank you and all that you're doing as critical first responders, as you are embedding incredible and important work, as Harrison said, for our future with our young folks. So thank you for all that you do.
We also would like to thank NASSP for their support in this process and making sure that we're able to deliver professional development like this to educators all over our country.
The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement would like to thank you for participating in the Leadership Preparation virtual webinar series. We hope you found this particular webinar informative and beneficial to your work as you prepare as a leader. To access the webinar series and find additional resources, please visit the Maryland Resource Hub. The Maryland Resource Hub can be located at marylandresourcehub.com. That is MarylandResourcehub.com. We appreciate your feedback and would ask that you take a moment at this time to complete the SurveyMonkey link or use the QR code. The feedback that you provide to us will inform our work in the office as we develop additional resources to support you in the field. Again, thank you very much for your time in completing the feedback. As a reminder, the continuing professional development credits are available to you for this leadership preparation webinar series. To receive 1 credit, you will need to view 5 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience for the webinar. That would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar, and completing the participant's guide, as well as extension activities related to the webinar. To receive 2 CPD credits, you will watch all 10 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience per webinar. Again, it would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar and completing the participant's guide while watching, and extension activities related to the webinar. After you have completed the work, you will then submit all of the materials to the Google Form link listed. If you need to contact us with any questions for any reason at the Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement, you can contact Ed Mitzel, Executive Director, at edmund.mitzel@maryland.gov. That is edmund.mitzel@maryland.gov. Or Dr. Lori Ellis, Coordinator for Leadership Development, at lori.ellis@maryland.gov. That is lori.ellis@maryland.gov.